Hello and welcome back to episode 100 of the Boropolis podcast. As always, as throughout all of those 100 episodes, I am joined with Nathan. And we've got quite a lot of positivity running through our veins after a good result. The Borough have picked up 6 unbeaten, and we've chosen I say chosen. I guess it's been a little bit lucky that this run of forms coincided with us hitting 100 episodes of the Boropolis podcast because, it would have been fairly miserable had we have recorded episode 100 after some of our form, before we got into this little run of form. So, Nathan, happy 100 podcasts. Happy Easter. How are you? How's things?
Yeah, mate, I'm not so bad. It feels like a long time since we've done a podcast, actually, obviously with the international break, and obviously we have had 2 games since the last pod, and we've got to dissect them today. But yeah, it feels like a long time, and yeah, not so bad. Just been off uni for Easter, and recovered from my illness in the last pod and got a cold all of a sudden in the last couple of days. So yeah, second podcast in a row with a little bit of a sore throat. So yeah, just bear with me on that one.
Yeah, I will just sort of start this episode off by saying, as if you've watched on YouTube for long enough, you would have known, you would probably would have realized on audio platforms. Hopefully, we're hoping that the audio's a lot better. As was said on the last podcast, we've got to episode 100. I've finally got a mic. First time using it today, so it could be horrendous. We might even have to re-record if I've somehow managed to mess things up. But I've got earphones in at the moment. It sounds fairly crisp. So hopefully it continues throughout the podcast. So, Nathan, going back, what feels like almost quite a while ago now, but it was only a few days ago. We're in that spell, as I said, which is a little bit similar to Christmas, where you almost lose track of the days. There's a few games on. The Premier League fixtures continue. The sort of Championship and EFL fixtures are just dotted around on random days. We're going back to Friday with Southampton. Obviously, the sort of disappointment, I guess, of not being able to get the 3 points against Blackburn still there a little bit. There was a lot of concerns in regards to injuries, which had happened during that game. And then also Riley McGree picked up a knock prior to the Southampton game, of course, away on international duty with Australia. Sort of skipping ahead a little bit to go back because we now know the extent of both of those injuries, but we didn't find out until after the Southampton game. Marcus Forss and Riley McGree both out for the season. In a season that has been absolutely filtered with numerous injuries, it's almost disappointed but not surprised. It's a bit of a hammer blow, really, but it's no shock.
Yeah, it's just been one of those seasons in terms of injuries, and I think, in McGree's case, it appears that he's sort of got his foot caught in the turf and sort of done his ankle that way. Um, so can't really be helped in that sense. But Force obviously got injured in that Blackburn game, but just the sheer amount of injuries that we've had this season, I think there's going to be a major sort of inquest at the football club in the summer when reviewing this season into what could possibly be changed in terms of the schedule, in terms of the pitches at Rockcliffe, or anything to sort of just negate the number, and certainly decrease it to a lot lower than it has been this season, because it's been nothing short of ridiculous, really. But yeah, luckily we are in a situation that we haven't necessarily got a whole lot to play for in terms of prizes at the end of the season, whether that be championship status because it's already been confirmed pretty much, and promotion. It's pretty much wrapped up that we won't be going into the Premier League, which is one of those things. But yeah, unfortunate to lose two of your better players that have certainly been influential in the last couple of weeks in this little mini run that we've gone on of turning it around post Stoke away a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, frustrating. But yeah, seeing that team at 2 o'clock on Good Friday and seeing the bench more than anything filled with under 23 players once again, it was like taking me back towards Christmas time where we literally had like 12 players fit. So yeah, not the best.
Yeah, it as I say, it's just been a constant theme throughout the season. And as you say, really, it's getting to the stage now where, of course, as a club, and all clubs will do so, they will reflect on the things they've got right in a season, the things that they've got wrong, sorry, and things that need to be changed as well. And I think one thing's for certain is it's got to the stage this season where it feels like the amount of injuries and the extent of the injuries that we've got can't be down to bad luck. There's got to be something deeper rooted, whether it's, as you say, whether it's the intensity of training, whether it's the amount of training, whether it's the pitches that we train on every day. There's got to be something, because it's one thing to have a few players out at one time, but even when we sort of had that period where I think, what was it, 14 or 15 players we had at one time, the injuries haven't necessarily even been just little knocks or things that people can, play on with. It's for the most part been injuries which have kept players out for prolonged periods of time, and that's a real concern. If you've got any sort of ambitions of getting anywhere in the Championship or any league as a whole across a season, you can't keep getting significant injuries. And yeah, okay, there might be a little bit of luck in it in regards to which players get injured in your squad, but it just seems like this season it's always been the key players. And Riley McGree and Marcus Forss are two of those. And I guess for both of them, they have had seasons where, unfortunately, they've just been two of the ones where they've got back, got into the swing of things, started to build a little bit of form, and then twice this season have been hit with a long-term injury, really. And as you say, I mean, Newcastle just down the road have had some really bad ones this season, but I can't remember a season ever for any team where there's just been so many injury problems. And as you say, it is going to be something where I'm sure it's something which is fully on the agenda for the end of the season sort of recap, but it's going to have to be something that going into next season is looked into, because, as we've said, it can't be a coincidence that we just keep on getting these injuries. Obviously going forward now, because as I say, we had that news after the Southampton game. But going into the Southampton game, as you say, you saw that team sheet. You were down at St. Mary's. I think we said in the last podcast, really, that the reason you'd made the journey was to see friends more so than actually go and support the team. It just so happened to be that you had an excuse to go and watch the football. I mean, in all honesty, Nathan, given the team that we put out, given the squad we had available, it proved to be quite the point, to be honest. We did ride our luck a little bit. Southampton did miss a whole host of gilt-edged chances, in particular Che Adams. But actually, through a little bit of grit and determination, Baldini hoying his head at things on the floor, and, some really, really top saves from Seny Dieng, we gave ourselves something going into the last 10 minutes to sort of build on and try and nick something with. And I guess when you go to a ground like St. Mary's, when they have that much quality, especially in the situation with the context surrounding the team that we had available, you kind of just hope that you can stay in the game long enough where if you get a chance, you can take something from the game. And fortunately, we were able to do that.
Yeah, it was a strange game in the way it went. Obviously, the early stages sort of followed the path that we all thought it would, which was Southampton dominating the ball and pinning Borough back in our own half, probably in our own box, really. Um, and yeah, took the lead after about 10, 15 minutes. Howson fails to clear a cross into the box, falls to Armstrong, drills it low and hard into the far corner. And you think, yeah, this could be a long afternoon. Um, but yeah, we sort of just didn't let our heads drop, stuck in there. Southampton continued to dominate the ball, but we did have one chance on the break with Azaz cutting inside and striking it into that near corner, and it just comes off the post and sort of ricochets back out. But yeah, half time you're going in 1-0, you're still in the game, you're moving on in the second half, and you think, well, after maybe 5 minutes of the second half, well, these can be got at. We had a couple of chances at the start of the second half, namely Latte Lath through on goal, and yeah, with his left foot, just sort of passes it on target at Bazunu, but nothing that threatens him. And yeah, Southampton, as you mentioned, Che Adams missed a couple of good chances, won a ball over the top, and he was through one on one, but at a tight angle, and he tries to bend it in the near post. Dieng makes a good save, but then the big one, the ball falls to him probably 5 or 6 yards out, middle of the goal, and a professional footballer that is meant to score goals, it's nothing short of disgraceful to miss the target as badly as he has. Really, um, yeah,
He just
really,
absolutely drags it, doesn't he? And I
yeah,
mean, there's so much of the goal to aim at as well.
yeah. Literally either side of Dieng and it's in. It's incredible. But yeah, as you say, you have to ride your luck, and yeah, going into the final sort of 5 minutes or so, you're looking at the subs bench, and Silvera and Gilbert are readied to come on. You think, yeah, this is probably game done. But they both combine for an equaliser. Silvera knocks it back to Gilbert. He sets himself and crosses it in. And yeah, Lath is probably best described as an instinctive finisher, because this one's actually a relatively difficult header that he has to navigate on target, but he does just that, buries it in that far corner away from Bazunu. And you sneak a point away at a side that, I mean, going into this, they were probably having slim hopes of automatic promotion. I know, having watched their game against Ipswich about an hour ago, that Sky was still trying to drag it out as if they were still involved. But yeah, I think this was really their chance against us, that they needed to win or else they'd be completely out of it. And yeah, Borough have put the nail in the coffin a little bit with that one, which is exactly what we want, Chris. We want to be the shithouses of this division in this little run till the end of the season.
Yeah, we did say that, didn't we? I
So
mean, we
yeah,
said we're happy to upset a few promotion parties, and I mean, we've sort of managed it up until today as well. Leicester got their first win in what feels like about 6 months, and we started off their bad run. So who knows? We might have a few more in us from now until the end of the season. Just on actually Latte Lath, as you say, I think it would absolutely be fair to describe him as an instinctive finisher. He gets his 10th of the season in all competitions. And you look now and you think he had quite a large spell out of the team through injury, shock. But actually, for a first season in a completely new league, in a difficult league, the Championship, it's really not a bad return. And you know, we've all seen, I think we saw it inside the first 15 minutes of his debut. He's going to be an absolute handful. He's got pace to burn. But when it comes to finishing, he's not a natural finisher. And I don't think that's being unfair. He's not. But what we have learned throughout the season is the less time he has to think about things, the more often than not, he's going to do things right. I mean, you saw it with the QPR finish. He has a little bit of time to think about it and volleys it into the corner. Southampton, as you say, it's actually a great header. It's a really, really good header to generate the power, because the ball from Gilbert sort of lofted in without any sort of pace to just flick it on, really. The header makes the goal. He's directed it into the corner. And yeah, you sort of think, I mean, we spoke an awful lot last podcast about looking ahead to next season. I'm in no doubt that Middlesbrough still need a striker next season, but you do look at Laugh and think there's definitely something there where you can give the recruitment team a little bit of credit, because even if he's not our go-to number 9 next season, he's going to be a useful player to have around. And yeah, 10 goals in his first season in England. I've seen a lot worse, to be honest. We've had a lot worse strikers over the years, haven't we?
Yeah, we have. I think the frustration really comes with the chances like that first one. I think that's what a lot of fans are sort of looking at and thinking, well, if you can just sort of fine tune things and gain a little bit of composure, then you've got a real top player there, that can go on and probably score 20 rather than 10. Um, but yeah, he's done really well to get himself into double figures. Only one penalty in that time as well. And yeah, I think there's certainly signs that he can be a good centre forward and a good option for his next season, albeit probably not option one. I think he's perfect in essence of a game where there's tired legs for the back 4 or 5, and
I think even just against certain opposition
yeah,
as an outball.
yeah, 100% balls into the channel, chasing it into the channel. He's strong enough to hold it up and bring others into play. Yeah, he's a really sort of useful player. So yeah, really pleased for him to get that goal. Really pleased for the fans that made the journey. It was a sort of real good away following for a team that, as mentioned, hasn't really got a whole lot to play for, going away to a team challenging up the top of the table, with many believing that they were probably going to get beat, really going down there. But yeah, rewarded with a point, a last minute equaliser. And yeah, really, really nice just to have that moment with the players at full time.
Yeah, and I mean, just before we move on, there's one moment in the game in particular that I want to talk about. And I think, especially considering you have a photo of the said man just next to where you're recording currently, you know exactly who I'm referring to, Nathan. If you're watching on YouTube, he's just reached over his desk and I believe he's going to show him to the camera. It's a certain bald centre half that goes by the name of Matt Clark. I mean, whatever you make of Matt Clark, I think one thing that can't be sort of disagreed with for the most part is that balls into the box, he's one of probably the better centre halves that you're going to find. It's meat and drink from, really. He loves throwing his body at things, getting his big balls bounce on stuff. But I mean, he's sort of fallen into that category now of, it's almost iconic, that attempted tackle on the floor, the sort of Phil Jones / John Terry school of defending, where he's literally already on the ground. It looks a certainty that Southampton are going to score, and he's just thought, well, I'm on the floor. I'm just going to have to throw my head at it. And it's actually great defending from Engel as well to stop the second, because I think it falls back to Che Adams potentially again. And he manages to make the tackle. It might be Armstrong. It was all a bit of a blur, but just the fact that he even attempted to throw his head at it whilst on the floor, I think that now goes sort of level in regards to goal line scrambles to that one in the Pulis era where Clayton was sort of pushing. Was it Ryan shotting on the line, but with his head in sort of like a scrum like type thing going on?
Yeah, away at Hillsborough. Yeah, there was a big sort of just loads of players piled on top of each other, and Clayton's behind it, wasn't he, pushing everyone forward? But yeah, was a real sort of body on your line type stuff from Clark, from Engel, Dieng, a lot of them just flying at it. And yeah, really nice to see the boys just fighting for all that's holy to keep it out and yeah, keep themselves in the game. And yeah, as mentioned, got you just rewards in the end with a nice point on the road on the south coast. And I don't know if it's just me, but do we always play some team on the south coast on Good Friday? Because I just remember us playing Bournemouth constantly around Easter
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, it does feel like that. And to be honest, it's nice that it's not Bournemouth because I can't remember very many good afternoons away at Bournemouth, especially over Easter. I still remember the one where we went there and got absolutely smashed 3-0. And it was the season where Bournemouth went up and they just got a penalty for no reason every game. And it still annoys me, to be honest with you. In that wonderful white kit as well, by the way, one of my favourite Middlesbrough kits of recent years. But yeah, as you say, got our just rewards for staying in the game. And also, like, I think there's something to be said about the fact that, you know, as you say, really, the playoffs are somewhat out of reach now, let's be honest. I think had we have beaten Blackburn, you would have gone into the Southampton game with a little bit more expectation. But given that we didn't manage to get the 3 points against Blackburn, it's sort of, and still does feel like a huge task and something which is very unlikely. But the fact that we're seeing players throw their heads at things whilst on the floor, when really you could argue they're in sort of flip flop on the beach territory, there's definitely positives to take from that, and definitely positives to take from sort of the characters within the team. I think we saw Matt Clark really sort of shine, his personality come through in that video trying Australian food with Sam Greenwood. I mean, could he become a fan favorite just off the back of this persona that he's building?
Well, I was first on the Matt Clark boat, I suppose, with my postcard. But yeah, I said it leads away. Look, he's a player. Just and then as he came on, he gave away the pen.
Yeah, I think it was like a record that after a substitution that he gave away a pen, 20 seconds after coming on after such a long injury layoff. But yeah, it's a funny one with Matt Clark, isn't it? It really is. The one man that sort of everyone had forgotten has become almost instrumental in our back five, four, whatever you want to call it. I mean, I don't think he would have even expected to play as much football as what he has done when he come back in that. I can't remember who we were playing actually now, but when he made his return after 14 months out, it's pretty remarkable to be honest. But yeah, obviously given that we got a point at Southampton, sort of the mood was, I guess, lowered a little bit with the news of the injuries. But as we've already discussed, it's just one of those things this season. Obviously, going into today's game, we're recording on the evening of the Sheffield Wednesday result. We were hoping that Rav van den Berg would be back because it was labelled as touch and go. Obviously, he wasn't. Isaiah Jones had hobbled off in the Southampton game, made it through to today's game, and then, to be honest, I was expecting perhaps a few changes in regards to the forward line. I know we are very limited, but I thought Silvera and maybe even Gilbert might have been given a chance. The actual only sort of real notable change was Luke Thomas coming in for Lucas Engel. I think it's Luke Thomas's first start since pretty much maybe a
Stoke,
month. Yes,
Stoke, I think.
Stoke. Yeah, Stoke. So I mean, he's come back into the team. Lucas Engel didn't have the greatest of games against Southampton, but he did make that great goal line clearance, so we'll sort of let him off for that. But yeah, he was the most notable of changes. And actually, it's just nice to be sat on the podcast talking about a result where we've played a team in the relegation mix and it's been pretty comfortable all round. A clean sheet, 2 goals. We haven't conceded a counter attack. We haven't sort of thrown a game away with a daft goal. We haven't conceded a worldie from about 35 yards out. And after the horror show at Hillsborough earlier on this season, it almost feels unthinkable, given the way this season's gone, that we've actually beaten a team and it's just been routine and comfortable, as I say, and just a fairly nice Easter Monday to enjoy 3 points at the Riverside.
Yeah, there wasn't a moment in the game really where I had to sit there with bated breath as Sheffield Wednesday approached our goal. Um, just as you mentioned, routine. It was like a trading game, really. At times we just kept the ball around them as if they weren't really there. Obviously, it's a strange part of the season where, I mean, of course, in the championship, anyone can beat anyone anyway. But whilst, as you mentioned, we're sat in the middle of the table, not doing a whole lot in terms of moving league position or trying to achieve rewards like promotion. Sheffield Wednesday have got a massive thing to play for in terms of their survival in the division. So you're sort of looking at this game and thinking, well, they're going to turn up and go for it and try and win the game. And the top and bottom of it is they were shit. They were really bad. And if I'm honest, if they're going to play like that for the rest of the season, then they're going to be playing League One
It
football next season. They were really bad.
it was a shock, wasn't it? And I think you've seen that from obviously following the result in full time. Danny Roll's comments, he is not happy at all. And it's completely understandable because, as you say, Sheffield Wednesday had so much riding on today. I mean, if you think they've probably looked at this game, they've thought Middlesbrough throughout the whole season have struggled against teams lower down the division who are happy to sit in and counter attack. They struggle to break teams down. If we can try and replicate a performance like Rotherham, a performance like Plymouth, a performance like Bristol City, I mean, the list is literally endless. Then we've got a really good chance to go and get a huge result in the bid to survive in the championship. And really, they just didn't get going at all. I don't know what sort of happened to them. I guess that almost, it sounds ridiculous to say, but it almost felt like a team where they kind of just expected to turn up and everything would happen for them. It would unfold in a way where they'd get the chance, they'd score, and we wouldn't score. And I don't think we were especially fantastic today, but I mean, for a team in our position compared to a team in their position, yes, we have suffered with teams coming to our home stadium and sitting deep. But I mean, did they really just think we were that bad? I mean, the league table would suggest otherwise. I know we've had a bit of a up and down season, but we've got players of a certain caliber where, you know, if you're not going to be willing to actually run and harry and chase and really be a bit gritty, like we were at Southampton, and throw your body on the line and basically just do all the fundamentals of what a team going away from home should do, then I don't know what they were expecting. They had one chance where Marvin Johnson sort of clips the outside of the post. And I mean, how fitting would that have been? But apart from that, they just didn't get going. And I mean, the space in the end throughout the game that O'Brien and Dan Barlasso were able to operate in was one of the driving factors in the fact that we were able to go and win the game with ease, because a lot of what was good about Middlesbrough's performance was those two midfielders. And I haven't been the biggest fan of either of them, and I've said that on the podcast. But what I will say is, if you're a championship team and you give Lewis O'Brien and Dan Barlaser enough space, then they're not absolutely hopeless. They will still punish you, and they are at a level where they can be useful players if you give them that amount of space.
Yeah, look, Barlaser needs time in the midfield to be able to pick incisive passes. And from maybe minute 15 onwards, I can't really remember him passing sideways all too often. It was just through the lines constantly, into players like Azaz, into O'Brien, who was slightly more advanced at times. Um, and yeah, I mean, there's a lot to be said about Sheffield Wednesday and Barry Bannon in particular being a player at this level, that could still do a job. Look, there's a reason that he's played the last 2 seasons of his career in League One and no one in the Championships picked him up. He just got jogged past all day today, and yeah, he just looks way off it. I mean, if you look at a player who is similar to him in terms of age, Johnny Howson. Johnny Howson dominates the midfield. Barry Bannon, I know he's got a task because obviously Johnny Howson plays with better players, but yeah, they were pathetic in midfield today. They just got bypassed constantly. And yeah, Barlaser and O'Brien both come away from it looking really good players, I suppose, based on today. Both had really good games, both constantly passing forward, driving through the midfield. Barlaser actually looked good in terms of pretty much being on the edge of opposition boxes at times. And that's something that I haven't seen from him at all in his Middlesbrough career so far. But yeah, we looked really comfortable. The final score's 2-0. It could have been 5 or 6. I mean, we probably could have been 1 or 2-0 up before we get the opener. Jones gets on the end of Greenwood's cross, and it's probably a little bit of a difficult one with it bouncing across the face of goal, but he blazes that one over. But yeah, the opener comes from a corner, which is nice, a bit different to what we'd usually see because we don't usually score from corners. But yeah, Greenwood, we all know about his sort of ball striking ability in terms of he just leathers it as hard as he can, but it's not just wayward, it's accurate, it's more often than not on target or on the money, and he puts it into an area. And yeah, I mean, we saw Latte Lath wheel away for the goal, but it comes off Hickway's sort of midriff and goes into that corner. And honestly, thinking going into the game, I thought it'd be a difficult game, and one like Rotherham or Plymouth where we just wouldn't be able to break them down. But once we got the first goal, didn't feel in any danger whatsoever of us getting the result over the line. Um, it almost felt like first goal wins.
Yeah, it did feel like that. And even Sheffield Wednesday's performance sort of went with that sentiment almost. I mean, even going into the second half, obviously we were 1-0 up at that point, almost 20 seconds after we've kicked off for the second half. Latif was through on goal. And again, credit to Latif because it's his tireless sort of running and work ethic that gets him the chance. But you just felt that any decent passing behind or any real quality, and we'd be able to score or at least get chances in the final third. And it was sort of the story of the second half, really. I can't remember Sheffield Wednesday creating anything. What I can remember is a few times Latif getting himself in fantastic positions and getting his finish wrong. I mean, we've already discussed it, haven't we? It's you almost come to expect it now, but at least he's still getting in those positions. He's got a bit of a Darwin Núñez feel about him last season, doesn't he? And I mean, Darwin Núñez, don't get me wrong, is still very erratic in the way that he finishes chances and goes about his general play. But Liverpool this season, you could make a case he's been one of their best players, or one of the most, I don't want to say efficient, because he also still does miss a lot of chances, but he's popped up with big goals and assists throughout this season. Any fantasy football players will know that, because plenty of people have him, because he does get a lot of goals and assists and they create a load of chances. But Latilaf, I think it's always difficult with a player like that, because finishing is something which I think in most cases it can't really be coached. You're either a finisher or you're not. And Latilaf doesn't seem to be that. But I guess, Darwin Núñez is sort of, look, Darwin Núñez is an £80 million footballer, or whatever the end price tag was. But Latilaf, as you say, you're hoping with a little bit of fine tuning and a little bit of coaching that those chances where he'll go through, and once he is through, there's no defender catching him. It's him versus the goalkeeper, and unfortunately, a lot of times his feet are too quick for him, and he'll stumble over the ball, or he'll trip, or he'll blaze his shot wide, or just not get enough power on his shot. But yeah, he's an interesting footballer, and one, as we say, that I'm looking forward to seeing how Latilaf how his Middlesbrough career pans out, because there is definitely signs there that he could prove to be a good bit of business. And I think he already has proved to be an exciting piece of business. But as you say, and as I've mentioned, throughout the second half, it was a case of how many are we going to score here? And actually, it probably took longer than expected to even get the second goal. And to be honest, it's a little bit fortuitous, isn't it? The second anyway.
Yeah, it is. And this is going to sound like a battering Sheffield Wednesday podcast, but they ought to be embarrassed with the defending for this goal. It's their corner up the other end, and it ends with about 5-on-1 in terms of Middlesbrough attackers breaking. And at first, I thought Jones had actually sort of had a shot or was going to choose to shoot. I mean, I'm hoping that he's actually trying to cross it and it's just ricocheted off Bannon, looped over Beadle and gone into the corner. But yeah, 2-0, game done. Jones, probably for the second game in a row now, he's been relatively poor, really. I don't think we're seeing the Isaiah Jones that we all want to see in terms of him at times isolating fullbacks and getting at them and running up against them.
He's been
Um,
quiet, hasn't he? And I
yeah,
think, in fairness, he's had quite a spell out of the team again. He said even after the game to BBC Tees that he's still wanting to get, back into the rhythm of how he was playing for a period. Because I think when he was in the team, and especially you think back to that Sunderland away game, it's good. I think throughout Isaiah Jones's career, whether it be at Middlesbrough or elsewhere, it's always going to be the conversation where if you get him on a good day, he's almost unplayable. But those days just don't happen often enough. But even when he's at sort of 60, 70%, he's still an attribute with his pace to get at defenders. But as you say, I do agree that the last two games he has been a little bit quiet.
yeah. But weirdly, this goal actually goes down as his own. So he'll take that 100%. I mean, yeah, as he mentioned, it took longer than expected to get that second goal. I mean, we're absolutely robbed of a penalty because O'Brien has been chopped down minutes into the second half from a short corner. It's the most stonewall penalty I think I've ever seen, and the referee just shook his head and turned round. Yeah, uh, look, he gives us one in the end, which was actually like a Premier League
Uh, Do
type.
you not? Yeah, I was just about to say, do you not think in the back of his mind, or a fourth official has maybe been in his ear and said, if there's any chance of a penalty in the second half, after you've completely missed the fact that Lewis O'Brien was chopped in half in the penalty area, just give them a penalty because you should have given them one earlier. It did feel like that a little bit, didn't it, when it sort of bounces off Barry Bannon's arm?
Yeah, I sort of said reluctantly, oh sorry, not reluctantly, wishfully, handball as it's sort of come back down off him. And you sort of there's sort of like maybe 2 or 3 seconds delay from it actually hitting his hand, and then the Borough player, I can't remember who it is, but the Borough player taking an extra couple of touches to recycle it before it's crossed back in, and then the referee blows and points to the spot. And I mean, there's no complaints from Bannon, really. He knows it's hit his hand. He knows his hand was in an unnatural position. And the shock for me was actually who stepped up. But I suppose at the point in the game where you're 2-0 up, there's 10, 15 minutes to go, and Sheffield Wednesday have offered absolutely nothing in terms of an opportunity on Dieng's goal. Then it's maybe about building confidence. And Greenwood, who hasn't scored since I think Swansea away, maybe in
Yeah, that
December,
sounds about right.
hasn't scored since mid-December, steps up. And I'm going to be honest, I was quite confident with the way that he strikes the ball that he'd bury it. But yeah, look, he tries to put it in that left hand side, and yeah, it cannons back off the post. Maybe you're thinking, well, Lath and Howson are on the pitch and they've both taken penalties this season and both scored. Then again, Howson has missed one as well.
He
So,
has. He has. Did you notice the fact that there was a little bit of a sort of back and forth with Latilaf and Greenwood?
no, I didn't actually see that. I'd seen it mentioned on Twitter afterwards, but yeah, I didn't see it at the time. Yeah,
It's an
interesting what
interesting
was
one
said.
because I don't know how you feel about this. I also did think with the way that Sam Greenwood is, I don't know if you'd seen earlier in the half, he had an effort from the edge of the box, which was a good effort, a really good strike, was saved, and he almost like let out a sort of primeval roar that he was just so angry. And it's obviously starting to weigh on his shoulders a little bit. You can see it even in his performances that he's just willing himself so much to score that he's just becoming so angry when a keeper makes a save. And as you say, it was probably a case of a little bit of a confidence builder. He grabbed the ball, Latilaf sort of made his case, and Greenwood was basically saying, "You're not having it." I can see both sides of the argument here because a lot of people have said, well, Greenwood's not even our player. He's on loan. So why is he taking the penalties when we've got players at the club who have scored penalties this season and are our players? I don't really buy into that. Sam Greenwood's part of the squad. It's not like he's been on a 6-month loan. He's been here. He's contributed to an extent throughout the season. He works as hard as anyone. I mean, I know it's something really minor, but even on his Instagram, there's no mention of Leeds anymore. Whether he's been effective or as good of a loan signing as what people want. I think one thing that you can't throw at him, is that he hasn't bought in. He works his socks off. He clearly feels part of things. So I'm not buying the whole, well, he's a lone player. He shouldn't take the penalties. If that's the case, he shouldn't take the free kicks when we get them. But everyone wants him to take the free kicks when we have free kicks. Johnny Howson even, again, I don't know if you saw this, sort of give a thumbs up to Latilaf as if to say, just let him have it. Just let him have it. He might need it. And it's annoying because you saw the moments that Sam Greenwood was having just before Christmas, in and around that Christmas period, and he went on that really good run, wasn't he? Where he was influencing games, perhaps not so much in terms of his general play, but his output. He was producing moments in games that were getting Middlesbrough points, and that's dried up. And I think the criticism is fair towards Sam Greenwood that perhaps apart from his ball striking and sometimes his set pieces, he doesn't really offer an awful lot. But you're hoping that if he tucks that penalty away, it sort of takes some of the pressure off his shoulders, and then he can go on and start contributing with goals and assists again. In this circumstance, he misses. I can see why Latilaf would be annoyed. I can see why people probably wanted Latilaf to take the penalty. But yeah, I'm just thankful that it obviously hasn't influenced the result, because, it's, I guess in some ways you could even applaud Sam Greenwood because he wants the responsibility. He wants to take the penalty. He's certainly not shying away. He doesn't seem like that type of player or that type of person where he would shy away. But yeah, I think one thing's for sure. If we do get a penalty on Saturday, Sam Greenwood will not be taking it. It'll be laugh.
Yeah, most likely. But yeah, nice to see a player who is probably a little bit short of confidence put his neck on the line and sort of say, yeah, I'll shoulder the burden of taking this penalty. I suppose there's not a whole lot of pressure on it with the sort of situation with the team and where they are in the table, and obviously in the context of the game as well, being 2-0 up. But yeah, fair play to him for putting himself up there. It hasn't gone the way that we would have hoped. It would have topped off the day nicely with a 3-0 and a confidence booster. But yeah, hey ho, 2-0, comfy as you like. 3 points wrapped up. Nice to finally beat a team down the bottom of the league at home. And yeah, it's a strange one. I think the sort of narrative set by BBC Tees that, oh well, the playoffs are still in reach is utterly pathetic, if I'm honest. It's been out of reach since January.
It's
No
only
matter
6 points though, Nathan.
Yeah, it's only 6 points, but there's about like five teams in between it that are like all miles better than us. And yeah, just a few of them feeling the pressure a little bit at the minute. Wink, wink, Coventry City. But yeah, it's nice to just come on here and after the international break with what was 8 games to go, am I right? Yeah, there was eight
Yeah.
games to go after the international break. Southampton first, they've got stuff to play for, took points off them. Sheffield Wednesday up next, stuff to play for, take points off them. Lovely, great start. Swansea up next on Saturday. A team very much in a similar situation to us, not really in any danger at all. Look, they're a funny old side in the sense of they're never really in danger of making the playoffs, never really in danger of going down. The biggest moment in their season's playing Cardiff. They usually beat them. Or other than that, they're utterly pointless. That is my genuine feelings about Swansea City.
Yeah, and I guess also that they did almost forfeit part of the season by persisting with Michael Duff, who, in fairness to Swansea, one thing that you can say in regards to a positive about the way they act and the way they are as a football club, they try and play football the correct way. And Michael Duff certainly wasn't trying to play football the Swansea City way. They've now got a manager who is more so in the mould of someone that you'd expect to be managing a Swansea side. And actually, I might get this completely wrong, but I think next Saturday's game should, and I stress should be a good watch on the eye, because it's two teams who don't have an awful lot to play for, if we're being honest. And I know that sort of we're 6 points from the playoffs and people think anything can happen. And yes, it's nice to have that still sort of thought at the back of your mind, but if we're being realists, it's probably not going to happen. And I think people do accept that as well. But because of the way that they are and because of the manager that they do have, you'd expect them to come and try and play a little bit. And we will also try and play a little bit. And actually, it'll be a nice change to go and watch a game at the Riverside where a team don't just come and put 8 men behind the ball and then just try and counter attack.
Yeah, well, I look forward to seeing them completely change it up on Saturday then.
Yeah,
Uh,
you're probably right.
no, I think you're probably right. I think we're both in a situation where you're both trying to build momentum and you both should be trying to instill your way of playing going into next season and taking a look at certain players in Swansea's sort of situation where they don't have a full squad of players out injured. They'll be looking at certain players, certain individuals, and Luke Williams will be looking to see if they fit his style of play heading into next season. But yeah, one of the last sort of games of the season where we're playing a side similar to us with not a lot to play for. Following that, obviously, we've got Hull, Ipswich, and Leeds back to back, which is obviously going to be difficult, but they've all got things to play for. So, look, pressure does funny things to people and teams. So those ones will be interesting. But yeah, this one's a no pressure game for both teams. And I'm gonna be honest, for the final 10 minutes of today, it felt like the final day of the season where both teams haven't got anything to play for. So I look forward to a full 90 minutes of that on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the fact that we're in the situation where we are, and to be honest, as you said, because the final 10 minutes were so much like the sort of, pass it forwards, sideways, and backwards, doesn't really matter if any team gets a chance. It's sort of game done and dusted. I just sort of was starting to reflect on the position that we're in. And do you know what? If ever there was doubts throughout the season that Michael Carrick might not be the right man to take Middlesbrough forward, the position that we find ourselves in now, where we are 6 points off the playoffs, and it's apart from the top teams, it's a little bit of a strange division. It really is, but we all know that. The injuries that he's had to deal with, the lack of investment in January, losing arguably his most informed attacker in January, and also then Matt Crooks. To the fact that we are even still within a chance, and it's a very small one at that, but the fact we even have a chance of making the playoffs, when you think of the money that Hull have spent, that Coventry have spent, it's pretty remarkable in fairness. And he really does deserve so much credit. I know he's got things wrong this season, but in his second year, his first full year as a manager, you've got to think, please, 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 Steve Gibson and co, give him some tools to really have a go of things next season. Because yet again, he just deserves an awful lot of credit.
Yeah, he does. Moving back to post Stoke, where we recorded the podcast, and we looked at the 4 games prior to the international break, and I sort of put it out there that if that sort of run of form had continued, I honestly thought that his sort of job would come into question. With us being 6 points above the drop, we were so drab on that day at Stoke that I think even the most positive Middlesbrough fan probably couldn't see us winning the next couple, definitely. But look, since then, yes, circumstances in that Norwich game played into our hands massively. But to go on a run where you're 6 unbeaten and you won 4, draw 2, I think you keep 4 clean sheets in that time. It's a pretty remarkable run of form, especially considering he's still got limited tools to pick from in terms of personnel. Today, again, having to go with the same squad that started 2 days ago. It's pretty remarkable stuff, really. And yeah, he deserves an awful lot of credit as well as the players for the change in system and yeah, for this run of form and still going all out, not with that on the beach mentality, because it may have been easy to fall into that as it is with a couple of sides at this stage of the season. But yeah, the boys are still fighting and they're still picking up some really good results. So yeah, all credit to Michael Carrick, the coaching staff and the players for battling through. And yeah, if I'm honest, I do think he'll sign a new contract. I think there is definitely talks ongoing. And yeah, hopefully, especially with the belated season ticket video in which he spoke about the excitement for next season and the future. Let's hope that Michael Carrick's long-term future is at the football club, because as a young coach, I don't think there's many better in the league, really, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I completely agree. I really, really do. And I mean, once we win next week and results go our way and we find ourselves 3 points off the playoffs, I think we will all sort of sit up and realize that this season could. No, I'm joking, Nathan. I was actually just doing that. I don't know if you were still looking at the camera, but I was actually looking into your side of the Zoom call and just waiting for the downright anger at the fact that I'd sort of tried to even suggest we may gate crash the playoffs. So yeah, I mean it would be quite funny because it is a possibility. I don't know if you've seen the fixtures for next week.
Yes,
No, I'm not saying gate crash the playoffs. I'm just saying go within 3 points. But listen, I mean, I don't think it's going to happen. So Nathan, I'm not going to go down that route. You don't have to worry about that. We'll discuss it when we get to it next Saturday.
tell you what though, as we spoke about a couple of weeks ago, in terms of next season and how things are going, just sort of away from Middlesbrough and onto teams that will likely be facing next season. Rodrigo Muniz, Chris Wilder, great stuff on
Nathan,
the weekend.
Nathan, all I'm going to say about this is one, that was fantastic. Two, Adama assist as well. I know Adama wasn't involved in the Chris Wilder era, but still, anything that makes that little sad little man unhappy is a win in my eyes. What I will also add is I don't know what episode of the podcast I said it on towards the back end of last season, but I said I will die on the hill that Rodrigo Muniz was a good signing and that there was still a player there.
Yeah, I remember it, and I tried to look for it the other day actually, but I
And
couldn't find it.
well, can you please look for that because it could really, it could be a good PR move for me as a podcaster, whatever that's meant to mean. Um, yeah, I did think of that clip actually, so I'm glad you also had that in your mind and you do remember me saying it. In regards to me and you as podcasters, I mean, it still seems a little bit cringy to say, in all honesty. How have we managed to get to 100 podcasts talking about Middlesbrough? Listen, we're not claiming to be the biggest podcast in the world, but we still get a fairly consistent audience across audio platforms, especially. We're now 100 episodes in. I just want to reflect. I spoke about reflecting on this season, but I just want to reflect for a few minutes about sort of where we're at, how far we've come, the fact I now have a mic as well. It's
Yeah,
it it is. It might not seem like the biggest thing in the world to other people, but I'm definitely proud the fact that we've made it to 100. I don't know. There might not even be another 100 after this. We might not make it to 200, but the fact we made it at this stage, I must say, I'm really quite proud of us, Nathan.
yeah, we're doing all right, aren't we? Yeah, 3 years in now, or 3 seasons in, I should say. And yeah, we've had a lot of lows to endure, but our fair share of highs as well. Yeah, started at Warnock, had to endure that sad old man that we've just talked about, and him deciding that he wanted to run off around this time a couple of years ago. And yeah, obviously last season, the Carrick era, lots of fantastic podcasts, United, Tottenham, Chelsea, Sheffield United, some worldy podcasts in there, and some stinkers as well, if we're honest.
Yeah, there
Um,
definitely has been.
but yeah, here we are, 100 episodes in, still battling on. And yeah, hopefully in a year's time, we're here on Easter weekend talking about Borough, I don't know, maybe 10 points clear at the top of the championship with 6 games to go. That'd be nice, really. It
It
would be
would be. I
nice.
mean, could you imagine really if we ever become a Premier League podcast? That would be quite something, wouldn't it? I don't know if it will happen. It probably won't, in all honesty, but it would be pretty cool if it did happen. And also, as well, when you think, as you say, we've had some up and downs, we've had some guests, probably not as many as truthfully what we would have wanted to. You know, it's difficult to get people on the podcast. Let's not sort of make any bones about it. It is incredibly difficult. We got Dimmy on, which was great, part of the promotion team. Then we sort of almost peaked. It's going to be hard to top that one ever again, regardless of the guest, and managed to pull on Neil Warnock somehow. It was obviously great value. And since then we haven't managed to sort of manage to get a guest where we felt like, you know, it would really be of a huge interest to the people that listen to the podcast or the fan base in general. We've tried, don't get me wrong. Boy, have we tried. But as I say, it's difficult. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we can bring you more of those as time goes on. But as I've said, it's difficult. We will continue to try. If we manage to, fantastic. If not, we'll continue to try. And yeah, I think just wrapping up towards the end of the podcast, I did actually hint at a giveaway for 100 episodes. I do have something in the pipeline. It might not be immediately after this podcast, but if you're at this stage of the podcast, keep your eyes peeled because we might give a few things away for those of you who are actually aware of the podcast. But that's all that I can say about that right now. So yeah, it might not be straight away, but in a few weeks' time, it'll be to celebrate this moment of the podcast rather than, you know, when we've won at Wembley or anything like that. But yeah, Nathan, obviously, as I say at the end of all of our podcasts, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your time over the 100 episodes that we've done. Probably actually we've done more than 100, but the way that it's falling, we might have just done like a review of one game and it's sort of not being classed as a full podcast, but in the sort of titles on YouTube, this is the 100th. So yeah, we're marking that down as the 100th. Yeah, what I will say is if you've got to this stage, as always, I'm going to bore you now and ask you to like and subscribe on all platforms. If you've watched, like and subscribe on YouTube, on audio platforms, rate and review. And yeah, Nathan, unless there's anything else that you want to add, that brings to an end the 100th episode of the Boropolis podcast and ending it, or not ending it. We're not ending the podcast as we hit 100, ending this episode with, which has been fairly positive and I've enjoyed it. And hopefully this little unbeaten run that we've got going on can become and stretch into something quite magnificent, really.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure on it ending quite magnificently in terms of league position, but look, everyone that's listened over 100 episodes will know that I'm quite a spiteful football fan. So let's just beat some teams and hopefully just sort of ruin other team seasons, because I find it thoroughly enjoyable, if I'm honest.
You get a real kick out of it, don't you?
Yeah, 100%. I absolutely love it.
Yeah. And I think that's a good place to end it on. Thank you for watching and listening. That has been another episode of the Boropolis podcast.